time has come. The time to put people under fire! Maybe you've heard of a little film called Shin Godzilla. You know, it's nothing special. Just been nominated for like 11 awards, and I think won about 7 of them. And I know one was Best Picture, and Best Japanese Picture for sure, of 2016. And I believe it, because I've seen it. I actually paid attention during this movie, which I'm not so sure other people did. Damn, it's also become the highest grossing Japanese Godzilla movie, beating out former box office champions like King Kong vs. Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Mothra. It's an undeniable success in its home country. So why, when we come to the US and Canada, does it have such a divided fan base? And I'll tell you why, because the Godzilla fandom is divided in itself. And there's a negative, a dark side to the Godzilla fandom. And unfortunately, it's like the majority of it. You're probably gonna hear me bitch about the Godzilla fandom a whole lot for however long I plan to keep doing this for like the 3 people that are still listening. But hopefully this will spark a fire. A fire! I'll stop that. Unless you like it, my glory metal voice. So, about the Godzilla fandom, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about that. Just because it has relevance as to what I'm going to talk about today. So there's this, well, like I said, it's the majority of them. They're like, not so much Godzilla fans as they are just, they're fans of like 4 or 5 particular Godzilla movies. And they just watch those ones over and over again. And anything else is just like, you know, they might collect toys from them, or whatever, like just call them classics but never actually watch them. And then they just complain and tear down every other movie, every other thing about Godzilla. So it's like, you're more of like a casual fan with a stick up his dick, if that's the way you want to go about things. Because then you're not really a fan of the big Godzilla franchise. You just, a small niche. A purist, you could call them. You could call them that, but even these purists don't seem to understand what Godzilla was about when he was in his quote-unquote purist form in the 1954 movie. And so a lot of these people don't like Shin Godzilla. Oh, big surprise, right? I'm sure it's a big shock that people don't like something cool and badass. Like, I know a lot of these people are the same ones that didn't like, not even an actual, like, thing. It was just a merchandise crossover with Evangelion. The mech, the psychological mumbo-jumbo mech anime. Still a very good anime. Still holds up to this day. Check it. But see, these people, these quote-unquote fans, were like, oh, 2 cool franchises crossing over to sell some, cool t-shirts and sneakers? Well, that's just preposterous. Keep these things out of my Godzilla, my sacred Godzilla. But then you'll also hear them being like, Godzilla should cross over with Pacific Rim, because that makes so much more sense, right? I mean, I for one am all for a crossover with Pacific Rim, but I'm also for Evangelion crossover with Shin Godzilla. Now, I'm not saying that anything that has Godzilla's name on it is just gold, and I'm not saying that plenty of Godzilla movies don't have glaring flaws. Believe I've watched all these movies about a jillion times in my life, and I will actually count that a jillion. So trust me, I know they're not all perfect, and I know that there are ones that are of way higher quality than others. And you know what? Some I've only rewatched a few hundred times than, in the thousands or whatever. That's okay, because I like to see the different ways of Godzilla, because Godzilla is a diverse character. He can be put in various different roles, and even if you're not a fan of, 1 or 2 specific ones, it's still like, that's still part of Godzilla. That's just who he's developed into, and that's what he's become. So much so that we now have 2 kind of opposing Godzillas running at the same time. We have our legendary, more heroic Godzilla, and then we have, this more dark, evil Godzilla, which is how he was originally intended to be, and not so much what he developed as. And then, he's more, so if anything, Godzilla himself as a whole is more of an anti-hero in that sense. Not necessarily good, not necessarily evil, but certainly does have his, he'll lash out at humanity if they're the problem. If you're fucking up, Godzilla's coming for you. He's got your number. So with all these movies, it's no longer easy to say what Godzilla should and shouldn't be. But I'll tell you one thing. It's the original Godzilla from 1954 that was the blueprint for all of this, right? I mean, you can't deny that. That's the first one. That's a fact. That's the fact, Jack. So why then, when we get the closest Godzilla to that creature since he first appeared in 1984 in The Return of Godzilla, which everyone who hates Shin Godzilla loves that movie, even though they're glaringly similar. Sorry. Why do we see this incarnation rejected so heavily by apparently the people who understand Godzilla? They praise legendary Godzilla, and rightfully so. It was a good adaptation. But they love him for his heroic badass side, a side which derived from the movies most fans will lambast relentlessly. That I don't get. See, they'll lambast these 70s Godzilla movies, but really, the legendary movie, well, certainly not as weird or wacky as the 70s Godzilla movies, definitely had that feel of a just very peaceful to humanity, save the day, big hero Godzilla. I mean, if you watch that film, it's basically Terror of Mechagodzilla, but replace Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus with bugs. Oh, and sorry, substitute actual interesting melodrama with wooden soldier acting. But that's another story. I'm more saying certain aspects of that film make it seem a lot like Terror of Mechagodzilla. You know, Godzilla shows up to fight, and then it cuts away to something else, and then we don't see them fight. And, you know, the way Godzilla just kind of shows up and starts his heroic battle as all this melodrama is going on around him. Very similar to Terror of Mechagodzilla. Oh, he's, you know, tries to be dark and aggressive, but he's still very much hero. So now we have a Godzilla that brings things back to the darker roots, much like in GMK in 2001, which is also praised by these fans that don't like Shin Godzilla, even though this one is pretty much drastically different and darker than the normal Godzilla that they praise for their, you know, being the heroic king of monsters. Still don't get. And somehow that's an issue? I've seen a lot of arguments and none that really hold any weight to them. Yes, you're all entitled to your opinions and your personal tastes, but you're only entitled to the ones that you can really back up on a factual level. You know, it's one thing if you just say, well, hey, I don't like this just because, you know, I don't really like it. I can't necessarily explain it. It just rubs me the wrong way. And then, you know, if you actually sit there and think about that, think of why you think of why you can't come up with a reason. It's just how you feel. Fair enough. I can totally get that. There's some things that by all logical means I should like, but I don't. Or it's not that I don't like them. I'm just kind of, can't explain it. Don't know why. But that's just how some people are. You know, people are like that with bands, colors, whatever the hell you want. There's just a few things that bother me about some of these arguments that I've seen. The obvious first argument is Godzilla's design. Now, okay. You know what? I guess I can see why his design is a problem, but I actually can't see why his design is a problem. If you follow me here. Like, I try to see why it's a problem. I try to see why Godzilla fan. I can get why, like, you know, general viewer or guy who watches Godzilla every now and then, you know, would just be like, what the heck is this? It's supposed to be green and breathing fire. But you know, the hardcore Godzilla fan, as some people call themselves, I cannot, for the life of me, look at that design in any way, shape, or form and think, no, that's not Godzilla. Are you blind? Do you have knot holes for eyes? That design, like it or not, is very much the core of Godzilla. That design is probably the closest to how Ishiro Honda intended him to look, and you can see that in a lot of earlier sketches and descriptions in his scripts. You can, if you watch like the behind-the-scenes documentaries on the classic media Gojira DVDs, you'll see that. You can find them online. Like, that's it. His head looks like a mushroom cloud because he was born from a fucking nuclear bomb explosion. And so you think that any type of creature that looks like that is going to look like a normal, like, pretty, sleek, pristine monster? No! It's going to look deformed. It's going to look burnt. His skin looks like magma. His skin looks like the burn victims of fucking Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The thing that inspired him. That's the whole idea. He looks like a bomb victim. Because Godzilla was supposed to represent the horrors of nuclear war. So you have a design that perfectly encapsulates that. And now it's a problem. And it looks badass as all hell. You got that nice extra long tail doing some real damage. Okay. Now the one thing, the arms. But, riddle me this. When did Godzilla fucking need to use his arms in this movie? Go on, tell me. When did he need to use his arms in the movie? Wait, he didn't. He wasn't fighting another monster. And then people say, well, he couldn't have fight another monster if it did show up. Let's see. The ever-evolving and adapting life form that this Godzilla is, that was able to grow in various levels of size within such a short time and develop various weapons to defend itself against all kinds of threats, it's just not possible that if involved in close quarters and was started to lose, that its body would not adapt and maybe beef up or extend its arms a little bit. You've seen all of its other body changes. It started out as like a slug eel type thing, just flopping around and sliding around the city into its final form by the middle of the movie. And you think that it can't just grow, increase its arm size and get a little muscle in there? Like, did you pay attention at all to what they were saying in the movie about it? Maybe you didn't, because apparently people were saying, oh, this movie's just too chatty. It's nothing but talking. Really? I feel like you weren't watching the same movie. I feel like maybe you were watching the people that were watching the movie with you talk about the movie. Because if you watch this movie, first of all, there's lots of Godzilla action in it. And I'll say this. There are other Godzilla movies that are again praised by these people that have this problem with the Godzilla movie of too much talking, but they'll praise movies like Invasion of Astro Monster. Guess what? Lots and lots and lots of talking, and talking. Godzilla's barely in that movie. You get what? 2 fights and a good destruction scene? And they're short. Those fights are really short. They're more like little skirmishes. I mean, yeah, the destruction scenes are lengthy. Those are really good. But half is stock footage from Rodan anyway. So, but you know what the difference is here, guys? There's no subplot. Whether the subplot is good or not in a Godzilla movie, isn't it nice to have a nice standalone Godzilla movie again where all the talking and dialogue is just about Godzilla? Even in 1984, there was a whole bunch of other, there was all that, well, actually, you know what? That's a bad example, because 1984, for the most part, it did keep its attention on Godzilla. There was a few little subplots here and there, but for the most part, it was mostly about figuring out Godzilla and what to do. And that's what this movie did. And Return of Godzilla, people love that. But now it's a big problem in this one. Every time they're talking, it's about Godzilla. He's always the center of focus and attention, whether he's actually on screen or not. And he's on screen a good length of time. Get some nice destruction scenes. Beautiful scenes, really. They're shot so well. I was super impressed with the cinematography. That cinematography it got an award for, might I add. I'm starting to see some flaws in this argument so far. It's obvious. It's so fucking obvious that half the problems these people have with this movie exist in other Godzilla movies, whether as problems or not. But they just ignore that. So, and you know what? The scenes, I thought these talking scenes, all these meetings, for one, it's hilarious how it's just a satire of how, they just go from meeting to meeting to meeting and don't actually do anything until it's too late. I thought that was really funny. And those scenes actually, they're so quick cut and edited so well. It really keeps the pace moving. I never once felt drained of this at all. You know what I did feel drained from watching? You know what I did feel was super slow? All the human scenes in Godzilla 2000. Oh my god. What a bunch of irrelevant, useless dribble half of that stuff was. If you want to see like super slow scenes that really just bog down the movie that's supposed to be mainly about giant monsters, just try watching that movie. A movie where a UFO sits dormant on a building for half a movie, and where Godzilla barely shows up until the end fight, and a scene in the beginning. How's that? But everyone loves Godzilla 2000. Oh, and so this brings me to my next. Oh, actually no. I'm just gonna go. We're gonna rewind for just a second. So the people that say that this Godzilla is not Godzilla. Whew. All right. Regardless of your opinion of if you don't like how he looks, just like I said, at the end of the day, if you don't like a design just because that design doesn't sit with you, even though it's exactly how Godzilla was supposed to look, then whatever. That's just your own personal taste. That's your own style. Some people started with heroic Godzilla. That's what they know. This Godzilla does not look heroic in the least. I can get that. I can get on that level. Well, sorry. I can't get on that level, but I can look at that level and be like, I understand why people are staying on that level. Now, when you say that this character is not Godzilla, even though it acts like Godzilla, it looks like Godzilla, it sounds like Godzilla, and it is Godzilla. You know why? Because Toho, the company that created this creature, okay, and made this movie, that owns this franchise, says it's Godzilla. Now, whose argument am I supposed to take here? Random guy in the United States on the internet, or the company that made the damn movie? The company that made the character. I think they know just a little bit more than you about what is Godzilla. And apparently a lot of the people who have a problem with this movie don't really seem to understand Godzilla, because everything that what Godzilla was originally about, they don't like in this movie. Incredible. Okay, so now we're going to go on to that. So there are people that are saying, well, there are some people that wanted this movie to be just like the old movies. And you know what? This felt like an old Godzilla movie. Not only did it have the old school sound effects, which we'll get to that in a little bit, we had the old school sound effects, and the overall feel of it was very much like an early 50s and 60s Toho kaiju movie. Where it's just usually one, sometimes it was like two or a group of monsters. But usually one monster, they're focusing on the monster to solve the problem. There's, some human subplot that sometimes diverges from the actual big idea, which you'd think when there's a monster involved, you'd have more. That would be your only concern, is the monster. But sometimes they write other things in anyway. Where, sometimes in cases like Dogura, where it's actually just like a big diamond heist plot with a space jellyfish thing just kind of written in there, throw it in there just for the fun of it. But that was when Toho was just throwing monsters into their movies because it was marketable and not actually writing monster movies. They were more just writing monsters into already written movies. But anyway, this whole, the whole setup of Shin Godzilla, the monster comes, the scientists have to analyze it. The monster does some big attack on the city that's awe-inspiring and breathtaking, and this one was especially. And then we get the classic Toho army rally music as they come up with this pseudoscience crazy cockamamie scheme that is just so crazy, but it just might work, that it wouldn't ever work in any other way. All right, so let's see. Think of movies like Rodan or Gorath even. Gorath, not necessarily a kaiju movie, but it is a natural disaster movie, and it does end the same way. All right, so in Shin Godzilla, spoilers, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to talk about the end of Shin Godzilla. So, if you haven't seen the movie and care about spoilers, which you should, stop listening and go watch Shin Godzilla, if you can. So, in Shin Godzilla, they send in train bombs and detonate explosives on buildings to knock Godzilla over so that they can give him this blood coagulant through his mouth with various crane-operated trucks. It's a really really interesting scene. And the blood coagulant's kind of like, I don't know, it might work, it might not. It seems to work at the end, but it's also hinted that it's probably not going to stay like that forever. And they have to be ready because he could just, could just revive at any time. Because again, constantly adapting creature and life form. And so, yeah, so that sounds ridiculous to you guys, doesn't it? Oh, and they use these drone planes to get him to use up all his energy attacking those so that they can have a better chance at administering this blood coagulant, which, by the way, is a shout out to the blood coagulant Yuki special, the blood coagulant bullet from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla that they were doing on that whole island scene during that movie. I don't know if anyone caught that. So then you think of movies like Rodan, where, they got the big monster attack, and then the monsters are in a volcano, and so then their idea is to detonate the volcano around them and kill the Rodans with the lava. Spoiler alert for a movie that came out in 1956. If you haven't seen it already, you're lost. Or, scenes like Gorath, where, and see, Gorath is a very widely accepted film, it seems, from the Toho fandom. And it's a good movie, don't get me wrong, classic. But they attached like a whole bunch of rockets on one side of the Earth and move it out of the way of this star that's coming to destroy Earth. So do you really think the ending of Shin Godzilla is more ridiculous than that? I'd love to know what the heck kind of things you guys watch then, because they must be droll and boring as all hell. Or even, I mentioned Dogura before, you know what they... You know what they do to beat Dogura? Bees. Its weakness is bees, so they shoot it with like wasp and bee venom. But train bombs, that's just ridiculous. It's not. That to me, it felt like, this is classic Toho stuff, And the Japanese army has always come up with crazy plans to like try and stop Godzilla. Look at King Kong versus Godzilla and Mothra versus Godzilla. Both critically acclaimed fan favorites, full of these like ridiculous military strikes. But you know what? When standard artillery doesn't work, and as we saw in Shin Godzilla, it doesn't, you have to start thinking outside of the box. And that's why I liked the self-defense force versus Godzilla fights in these movies, because, yeah, sure, while there was a lot of same old, shoot, get killed, they also sometimes pulled out this, like, what the hell? Who even thought of this plan? So desperate, but we gotta try something. That to me felt very in the spirit of old school 60s and 50s kaiju Godzilla movies. Or Godzilla Raids Again, even, when he's having a showdown with the planes, the fighter planes, and they're bombing the ice around him to entomb him. And might I add that kept him entombed for, what is it? Let's see. From 1955 to 1962. I'm not about to do the short, quick, easy math that a fifth grader could do here right now. You see my point? And so that leads me to my next thing. And that's, well, humans shouldn't be able to beat Godzilla, because that would never happen to the real Godzilla. That's not the king of monsters that I know. Well, I guess the very first Godzilla isn't the real Godzilla either. The one that was killed by an oxygen destroyer, a man-made weapon. Not to mention the cadmium bombs from the Super X in Godzilla 1984, or Return of Godzilla. Like, you guys realize that if that nuclear explosion hadn't have gone off, Godzilla probably would have died, or it would have at least taken him like a few weeks to a month to recover from that. That was definitely killing him. His heartbeat was slowing and everything. He was out of it. He was done. They could have easily, done something with him at that point. They could have studied his DNA, found the weakness, kind of like they did in Shin Godzilla. Oh man, it's almost like all these ideas have been introduced in some way or form before, and were widely accepted. But now it's a big problem because it's new, I guess. And that's the cool thing to do, is hate new things even when they're awesome. Oh, and by the way, let's see, GMK, the one which also has the Dark Godzilla brought back to his roots. Let's not forget that a guy in a submarine that was eaten by Godzilla, and he woke up thanks to the spirit, the guardian spirits or whatever, but he shot a hole through the inside of Godzilla, and that ultimately was his demise, because when Godzilla went to shoot his heat ray at two human beings, for some reason, instead of just stepping on them like he normally would, it caused him to blow up from the inside. And while he did not die, he was at the bottom of the ocean as a disembodied heart. Little bit of a setback. It'll probably take him a while to regenerate, and you know what? He's apparently still regenerating, because we still haven't gotten a sequel to that movie. I'm kidding, of course. It's a standalone movie. It was never getting a sequel. But you see my case. You see my point. You guys can't complain about Godzilla being defeated by man-made efforts now, when you've never complained about it before. Now, if that's always been your issue, then, you know, that's fine. If you've been the type of person that's always like, well, I hate how Godzilla gets, you know, defeated by this man-made thing, you know, whatever. If you've always been saying that, then you get a pass, because that's something you've always been aggravated about. But I have never seen anyone really complain about that before, until now. And maybe it's just because this is the hot new movie, and this came out, you know, in big internet time, where you can see all these types of arguments unfold in real time. Let me tell you, these you know, these forum boards and these comments and these Facebook pages, they just light up with this stuff if you catch them on the right time. Usually between the hours of 12 and 3 a.m. At least that's what I've seen. And so, what else? What other complaints? Oh, yes. Right, of course. Godzilla's new abilities. Oh! There are so many reasons why the complaints about Godzilla's new abilities are stupid. The main reason is that people think that Godzilla shouldn't have ridiculous powers. When the fact of the matter is, Godzilla's pulled out several ridiculous powers out of his ass multiple times. Sometimes it was just a one-time deal. So, let's go over these, shall we? There's a, you know, fan favorite, for better or for worse, when Godzilla fired his breath, atomic breath, at the ground, and used that like a rocket ship as a jet propulsion to fly through the air. But Godzilla shooting lasers from his tails and his back fins are that's ruining Godzilla forever. But when he flies through the air, which I'm pretty sure it was either Ishiro Honda or... No, I think it was Tomoyuki Tanaka, the producer of the Godzilla movies. He didn't let Banno, the director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, in which that event happened, he told Banno that he ruined the Godzilla franchise. That was there. The flying back in 1971 was what was apparently going to ruin the Godzilla franchise. But it didn't, and I don't think that back lasers and tail lasers are going to ruin it either. First of all, again, I don't think people paid attention during when they were talking about only Godzilla and keeping the plot interesting, because they said he's made of multiple different life forms. So is it really that unfathomable to you people that, you know, part of these life forms could be growing on the end of his tail? And that if Godzilla can shoot lasers from his mouth, why can't some of these other organisms that are a part of his genetic structure and DNA also develop and share this same ability, because they are working as one living life form to defend itself and adapt and conquer its environment? Is that really that far-fetched in a science fiction movie about a multiple organismed dinosaur-looking creature that is immune to tank and artillery fire? Really? Is that really too hard to believe? That you just can't wrap your minds about that. This Godzilla franchise rooted in sometimes ridiculous science fiction. Aliens, you know, souls possessing monsters. But this is too ridiculous. What about the time Godzilla was on Planet X and jumped and body slammed King Ghidorah? You guys didn't think that was too un-Godzilla-like, did you? Even though it was. You know, Ishiro Honda, he was very against that kind of stuff. You know, he thought Godzilla should stay dark. I bet if Ishiro Honda, the director of the first Godzilla, I'm not saying he can do no wrong. You know what? Fuck it. If every person that worked on the original Godzilla and created him saw Shin Godzilla, I guarantee you that they would say, that this is a good Godzilla movie, very close to their original intention, but with a few unique twists to keep it fresh, new, modern, interesting. Godzilla's got to keep up with the new Monster Wave people. Come on, wake up. If it's just the same old thing day after day, which apparently is what you guys want, no changes, no nothing, same old 3 monsters, Mothra, Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, every damn time. Nothing different, nothing new. Just keep churning out the same old crap, and we'll be like the Halloween franchise, and only have, gems every now and then when someone tried something fucking different. Anyway, back to ridiculous Godzilla attacks. Flying kick in Godzilla vs. Megalon, let's not forget that. Also, Godzilla has talked through, ruptured speech in Godzilla vs. Gigan, and in some versions, it's through, comic voice bubbles to go with the whole manga theme of the movie. Well, that's perfectly acceptable. That doesn't ruin Godzilla, but back lasers, no way. Let's just say every scene that Godzilla's been in Zone Fighter ever. And I love those. See, that's the thing. I love how this series can be super serious and dark and resonate with reality, but can also pull out some of the most left field shit. And you know what? That's just part of the tokusatsu medium in general. A lot of these movies and shows do this kind of thing. And if you're a so-called fan, it's just something you should kind of be used to by now. And you would think it's something you enjoy about this, because it's a rarity that they don't throw something like this in. You're just too dumb and blind to notice. Some of you may just be blinded by nostalgia. That's fair enough, because that means you probably don't watch these movies too often, to really think. Or maybe it just doesn't click. But I'm just trying to open some people's eyes to show you that, the problems that people are listing with Shin Godzilla exist in other Godzilla movies. But the problem is here, whereas they use these to, practically crucify this movie, they just, with the others, they get a pass. Why? It's they're old? What? Is that it? I don't get it. Hey, look at the Heisei series. That Godzilla was more or less stayed pretty Godzilla-like and serious, but then Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, or Mechagodzilla, which was used from the remains of a futuristic cyborg King Ghidorah. That doesn't sound crazy to you? Okay. Speaking of Mechagodzilla, how about that time Godzilla turned it into a living magnet? Why? Because a few nights ago he got hit by lightning from a magnetic storm? That doesn't ruin anything? People love Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and I do too. It's a very action-packed, really fun 70s movie that introduces, cool-ass Mechagodzilla. Classic's the best, I personally think. But, the other Mechagodzillas are also badass in their own right. Oh, let's not forget the time Godzilla had laser eyes in the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Now, that's a cartoon. So, in hindsight, I guess it's a little bit more forgivable to people, because it's for, I don't know. Let's see. The time he jumped up a ridiculous amount of feet in the air and body slammed Megaguirus. Now, in that movie itself, I felt was a modern day 70s Showa era Godzilla film. And people didn't really like it for that. For that reason. At least that's what I've gathered, is that people didn't like how campy it was. But then these same people are always the one praising campy Godzilla movies and don't like when it gets serious and dark. Make up your minds. Holy Christ. And just to add in one more thing, what about how do you pronounce this? The Shi jump in Invasion of Astro Monster, that victory jump he does. It's famous. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Even if you're just a casual fan, you know what I'm talking about. And you know what? Ishiro Honda didn't want Godzilla to do that either. He shook his head, he smacked his forehead and said, no. But Eiji Tsuburaya, he wanted Godzilla to become more lighthearted and accessible to general audiences and kids, mostly kid audiences. In fact, I'd say all by you get to a certain point in the late 60s. And so I get if that Godzilla makes more of an impression on you because you saw it as a younger kid, but that doesn't mean you should just ignore the fact that it didn't start like that, and that what Godzilla truly is what he started out to be, or what he has even grown to be, which is a mix, a variation, a constantly shifting image of these various ideals and personalities and stories. I feel like, you can dismiss some of the more lighthearted Godzilla stuff if you want. But if you're going to call yourself a hardcore Godzilla fan, shouldn't you be more leaning towards what Godzilla actually was intended to be and not what he became because people wanted to water him down? Like, I like the heroic, lighthearted Godzilla movies. I do. I really do. I love them. But at the same time, I too would have been like, yeah, I wonder what it would have been like if Godzilla had just stayed as a more darker, serious, aggressive character. Is portrayed in like Mothra versus Godzilla. I really do. I don't think Godzilla would have gotten popular. I think a lot of his popularity internationally is certainly due to when people are able to look back on some of the more funnier ones. That kind of introduced itself to American audiences and other audiences, and then it weaved in to people like us, Godzilla fans, and then we, started expanding more on this and saw the whole thing was really about and just grew to love it. So, it's safe to say that without Godzilla taking that route, yes, it did not save him at the time, but you know what? It probably postponed his life and legacy just enough that he was able to, take what was left and come up with a big return in 1984. And revive the series. So we need to understand that. We need to understand that both sides of Godzilla are necessary. And you guys can't just ignore the fact that the series has been dark, but the series has also been ridiculous. You also can't say that you want one, but not the other, but then complain when you get one and not the other. Or whatever. I don't even know what the hell I just said. But basically, you can't complain about Godzilla being too campy when you praise the campy Godzilla movies and then complain that he's too serious when you want the serious Godzilla as well from like Mothra versus Godzilla and Return of Godzilla, and you can't do that. So this Godzilla, he's definitely serious, but he also pulls out the ridiculous stuff that the campy Godzilla has, and I think that adds to the old school Toho feel. That didn't strike me as anything unnatural. Nothing more natural than Godzilla's nuclear pulse attack. It didn't jar me for a second. I thought it was really awesome the way he could do that. And a bunch of his other new abilities. Godzilla is the idea that we can only postpone the inevitable. That yes, our combined efforts can grant us temporary peace. We can overcome crisis. However, if we don't stay on that path, then we have to deal with our own problems all over again. Sometimes they come back even stronger than before. I feel like that is Godzilla's core ideal, or what it has evolved to, and what it kind of started out as being worked as a nuclear allegory. Humanity stays united, peace is kept. Divided, we're subject to a god of destruction's wrath. And Shin Godzilla encapsulated that perfectly, as well as, it was also used to kind of show how slow the Japanese government was, and it showed a lot of footage that was very similar to the tsunamis and earthquakes that have hit Japan in the most recent years. The same way that actually socially relevant Godzilla movies, which are praised, have done before us. But now it's just no good for some weird reason that we can't even explain. And you know what? The satire was also had in the same vein as King Kong vs. Godzilla with its advertisement satire. And that was hilarious to people. But now this one's just, oh, well, I've heard it, I get it. I don't have a sense of humor now all of a sudden. Which, if you felt it was running dry by the third act, fine. I get it. I understand. The humor in King Kong vs. Godzilla was starting to run dry by the third act. But that's when they switched from the human actors and their humor to the monster fights, which were more like wrestling moves anyway. Which again, silly Godzilla doing wrestling moves with King Kong just actually heavily boosted the franchise. So I don't see the problem with the tail laser and the back spines, especially when it's really perfectly reasonable inside the the narrative that the movie provides for us. Like, it's fine, guys. Weirder things have happened. Watch any Ultraman show, will you? Like, come on. It's science fiction, not just hardcore, straight-up realistic science. If it was, there wouldn't be a Godzilla in the damn first place. So, I've said my piece. I know I said it super aggressively, but these are just points that had to be made. And I'm an asshole, so I'm gonna say it in that kind of condescending way. Whether you agree with me or not, that's up to you. Again, this is all just subjective. It's art. It's movies. You're still, you're still gonna feel the way you feel. I'm just saying, evaluate some of the points that I brought up. If at the end you come to the conclusion that either my points were wrong, even though I pulled them directly from the movies themselves, then that's your prerogative. That's what you've come up with. That's how you feel. And that's it. But just, before you come up with these opinions about new Godzilla movies, try and look back on the older ones and think, well, if I liked it here and could accept it here, what is it about this one that makes it unacceptable for me here in this movie? And I think you'll find that you can appreciate Shin Godzilla in at least somewhat of a new way, and maybe a way you didn't think of before. It's if you're gonna have these opinions, and if you're gonna cram them on people's Facebook statuses all the time, be angry guy always wanting to destroy all monsters for the 80th time. Just take the time and evaluate what you're saying and what you're really thinking, and remember the Godzilla movies of the past that you claim to be this huge fan of and know all this stuff, but apparently can't remember all the times where they did the things that you hate in this movie and previous movies, and you loved it, or at least didn't have a problem with it or voice any real concern. I've seen a lot of this, and I'm not targeting anyone in particular. I'm taking a lot of the same complaints and viewpoints that I've seen over time collectively. And some of my friends don't agree with me on certain points, and I don't think of them as any less intelligent or anything like that for it. That's just their opinion, and I might think that they might be forgetting that these same things and what they call issues have been present in other movies that they love. But you know what? For the most part, I've only seen a few people think that the movie was actually ruined by them. Some of these people, while they have specific gripes that I might not find, real gripes, but whatever, they still like the movie overall. And with good reason. It's a good movie. And like any good movie, it has flaws, but overall, it's something you can really enjoy, and I think it's something that will really stand the test of time and become one of the top Godzilla movies in history. It already pretty much is. It's my second favorite one, next to the classic 1954. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. I'll have another episode continuing my Go Nagai trek with Demon Lord Dante as soon as I can get that out. Peace, man.